This Super Nintendo game, Earthbound, is worth $350 to $400. I only paid $250 for it because somebody tried to fix it, but unfortunately failed. So in this video, we're gonna see if we can fix it. So the case on this game, the outer shell, really isn't in too bad a condition. The labels look pretty decent. This one definitely is faded and scratched, but really not too bad. But we gotta see what's going on the inside. I'm not sure what's going on, and I know these things can get pretty bad. I'm hoping that it's not just totally liquid damage or something. Okay, here we go. Just 2 screws to get these apart. And this is what we have to work with. Oh wow, okay, so we've got, it looks like some corrosion on the traces. Yeah, there's some green solder mask that's kind of worn away here. Not too much damage on this side. Let's check the top side or the other side. And definitely have some liquid damage here. Missing a battery, and these things have just kind of been torn up. It looks like that battery must have leaked or something over here. I'm not really sure. These pins also corroded. Oh, this is going to be a problem. This one, the copper is totally been, it looks like torn off. And this one, I don't know. This one might be pretty bad too. These are pretty difficult to replace in a way that will stay fixed, because if you replace them, it's easy for it to just peel off, like if you were to super glue a new trace on. But I think I have something that might work for that. I'm not, there's a line here. I'm not sure if that's a crack or not, but that's worrisome. Got some more corrosion up here. Okay, I think what we're gonna have to do is get under the microscope and inspect this a little bit closer. All right, and here are those nasty battery contacts. Looks like somebody just tore the battery off of there. That's one way to get it off, I guess. All right, let's look around here, see what we have. Those pins all look pretty good. We've got some corrosion down here for sure. That pin is a little corroded, but not too bad. This capacitor right over here has some corrosion, but it looks like everything's still connected and doing fine there. This one looks fine. This pin's got a little corrosion on it. These look actually probably okay. We got, yeah, a little bit of liquid damage under there, but nothing crazy. Nothing's going to cause a problem, at least right there. And no problems down here. We definitely have a problem here, but I don't see a break in the circuit trace. Everything looks still connected there. Oh, maybe not. Okay, now the corrosion is eating through that trace, which that's connected to this, that trace right there, the game slot pin. That's in pretty bad shape. What else do we have here? All these look okay until we get to here. This one's a problem. And there's a break here, there's no copper here, and there's no copper all the way here. So this is a problem all the way up to up here where you can see the copper on this trace. So that one is definitely a problem as well. And then looking at all these connections, these look mostly fine. Let's check the other side real quick. Yeah, nothing too crazy here. All those solder joints look fine. Let's check the game slot pins. So on the back side, these actually all look mostly okay. That one's definitely got some problems. And there's a little bit of copper hanging on right here, so that trace actually I think is okay. Oh, or is it? Oh, maybe not. Nope. So right here is a break in that circuit as well. That is the third pin in. 1, 2, yeah, that is this same pin on the other side. So given that there's so many of these game slot connectors that are bad and there's not really a super good way to fix these, I do know a way that you can fix them, and I'm gonna demonstrate that. This is gonna be my first one of these I've ever done, so it'll kind of be an experiment for me too, but I think this method would work. But also, I'm not confident in my skills or necessarily the method because I haven't tried it before. So I'm gonna try that on this one trace just to see if it works, but then after that, we're gonna swap this ROM into a better board, and that's what we're gonna do to fix this one. Now, this is the first time I've ever done this. I think this is the only chip we have to swap, so we'll try that first and see if it works. But before we do that, let's get this circuit pad replaced and see how that works. Before we do that, I need to scrape this old one off. I don't know if scraping or grinding would work better. Let's get a blade in here and see if we can get it off easier that way, because we need a nice flat surface. How is this one stuck on here so good? That's what I want to know. Clearly most of it was not stuck on here this good. Let's try grinding it off. That is not working very well. I don't want to grind off too much. I don't want to create, you know, kind of a low spot in this pad, but let's see if we can do it. Definitely a lot for this little grinding pen, but it's coming. And we're all the way through right there. Let's see if we can pull any of this off any easier. I really don't want to grind into the board there. Oh, there we go. Now we're getting it. Come on, last little piece. Making some great noises. There we go. Got it. Now we'll clean this up a little bit. I'm actually going to use my grinding pen to kind of rough up this whole pad. There we go. Now it looks like we got a little piece of the old pad here still. How is this still stuck on there so good? So strange. There we go. Little piece there too. This needs to be all nice and flat so the new pad will stick on here really nicely. There we go. All right, so now we'll clean this with a cotton swab. Just rub on it really good until it's nice and clean. All right, and there we go. So next, I'm going to use this replacement pad, and I already have it marked where I need to cut, so I'm going to cut it there. Hopefully somewhat straight. All right, that's not too bad. And then cut down each edge. So these traces have a film on them, and the film is actually a glue, an adhesive that bonds when it's hot. So the goal here is to remove this, and then we'll place it, and then we'll heat it up, and this adhesive should melt and bond it to the board. That's what's supposed to happen. There we go. All right, and there we go. Now I have that placed approximately correctly. It's gonna be hard to heat this up while I keep this in line where I think it needs to be, but here we go. Now I actually don't have the correct iron for this. There is a bonding iron you're supposed to use. I'm not using that bonding iron. Okay, that's pretty rough, but that's approximately what we need to do. Now let's clean this up a bit. And I think that's actually bonded really well. Now the surface is a little bit rough, but I think we can fix that. Hopefully. Some of that I think is probably solder from my iron, which is why you use a bonding iron and not an actual soldering iron. But since this is just kind of an example to see if it works in an experiment, that's just fine. So, how did that work? Yeah, that worked pretty good. Now, would that work going in and out of a game slot long term? I don't know. That's hard to say, and that's why I don't want to repair this cart with that method, especially because there's 3 of them. I think this probably could work. I'm not sure about long term, but it definitely would work for a while, I think, just based on this experiment. The other thing too is if you have the correct bonding iron, I think this would also look a lot better and probably work a lot better. But I just wanted to try it with my soldering iron just to see if this was even an option for fixing these in the future. And based on what I see here, I think it actually might be. Now that we're done with this experiment, let's get to the actual repair. So I have a copy of NHL 97. This is a pretty cheap game that you can buy. And the board on this should be very close or basically exact to the board on Earthbound. So let's check it out and see if it is. That's what we have on the inside of NHL 97. And this is Earthbound. What do we think? It looks exactly the same. It's got the same number here. All the other markings are the same. So as far as I'm aware, the only chip we need to swap is this chip onto this chip. So I'm gonna remove this one and then we'll put this one in its place. Then we gotta give the pins a good cleaning and also replace this battery. But let's get that chip swapped and hopefully that's all we'll have to do to fix this one. So I'm actually gonna remove this chip using hot air and use my hot air soldering station to heat from the bottom and then remove the chip using a pair of tweezers. And now we need to use the same method to remove the chip from this board. So again, I'll heat on the bottom, just kind of going over both rows of pins. And then once the solder melts, the chip just lifts right out. Should be getting melting. Yep, there we go. I was about to say it should be melting any time now. It totally was. Come on. Come on. Get out of there. There we go. Got it. All right. Now looking at this Earthbound cartridge, it was not in good condition under here, although I don't see any like permanent damage, but it was pretty dirty under here. The chip itself is really dirty. I don't like the looks of these marks. That reminds me of like overheating marks, but hopefully the chip is okay. If it's not, then that's obviously not ideal. But we're gonna go under the assumption that the chip is just fine. So we've got that all clean. Now what I'm gonna do is clean up this board. We need to remove a bunch of the solder so we can get these holes opened up so we can install the new chip. We also need to clean up these legs. This old solder right here is kind of stuck to it. That'll prevent the chip from going down in the holes. So first, let's clean up these holes and then we'll get the chip installed. So we need to flux it up. Flux is going to help all this solder flow out of these holes. There we go. Using a large iron, so we got a lot of heat on these to pull that solder out. All right, that one's looking pretty good. Now we'll come through on the bottom row. Our wick is getting saturated. That's why it's not continuing to pull the solder off. So let's cut off the saturated wick. Now that'll work a little bit better. Starting right about here, it looks like. There we go. Okay, that is looking pretty good. Now let's clean up the chip. I'm going to bring some solder over and get these pins full of solder. So then when I bring my iron over, they just clean right up. Okay, that actually looks pretty good. Okay, now this gets mounted just like this. Gotta make sure all those go right in the holes. Oh, and they do. Okay, that was pretty easy. Now we just need to come through and solder each of those legs on, and then we can clean it all up and get that battery replaced. Of course, we need to add some flux. Not adding quite as much since there is some flux on the board. And here we go. Gonna add a little bit extra over here. These legs didn't get quite enough. And this leg right here doesn't want to take any. It tells me that likely that leg is probably a little dirty or maybe corroded. So I'm gonna use this razor blade, X-Acto knife, to clean that leg up. I'll use my dental pick as well. All right, let's see if that did it for us. Let's add more flux just to make sure the flux is keeping it clean. There we go. That looks better. All right. And now this bottom row. Add a little more right here. There we go. And a little more right here. Okay. Now I'm going to clean that all up. Get all that extra flux off the board. There's a lot. Which is fine. Just need to get it all cleaned up. I'm using no clean flux, but even with no clean flux, I like to clean it. Partially just because when you work on a board that has a bunch of flux on it, then you just get it everywhere. So I like to try and clean up after I'm done to get rid of it. I think I'm getting more cotton from the cotton swab on here than I am cleaning the flux. But that's also easy to get off, so no worries. This one I don't like the look of. I'm going to heat that up again and put some more solder on there. I think that's the one we were having problems with, but I think we just got it. Now let's clean this up more and then we'll get under a microscope and just make sure all those joints are perfect. All right, and looking at each of these joints, they all look really good. Solder looks great, no problems there. Okay, so all that looks good, let's get this battery replaced. Now for this, I'm going to use the solder wick method again. So we got to get lots of flux on these joints. There's a lot of solder here. There we go. All right, and I'm going to bend my oops, got to get my fume extractor on here. Bending the braid up like this just makes it so I can get into tighter spaces a little bit easier. Okay, and that is coming up nicely. Got to get some on this side now. Okay, that one's good. Now let's get this one. Trim off the soaked section of braid. Give ourselves a little bend right there. There we go. Now we can get down and get solder up. Okay. Well, now let's see if that battery just falls right out. Perfect. Now, before we get this battery out, what I'm gonna do here, and I don't know if this will make this game worth more or less, but I'm actually gonna install a battery holder so you can actually replace the battery. You gotta make sure it is in there correctly though. So we're gonna install this brand new battery, which is gonna go in the holder. Should go in, yep, just like that. So this connection connects with the top, which is positive, and that is the top connection right there. That means that the battery holder needs to go in like this. So one goes down there. Oh, come on. There we go. And one goes right there. That's a little bit tall, but we're gonna see if that is gonna work for us. I think it'll work fine. So there we go. Now we need to apply some flux and then solder these pins in. Hopefully this doesn't devalue the cartridge. I wouldn't think it would. It just is, obviously it makes the battery much easier to replace, but you never know with stuff like this. Sometimes these games that are more valuable, people are a little picky with, so I don't know. I suppose if nothing else, I could just, you know, uninstall it if it was that big of a deal. Okay, and that actually looks pretty good. Okay, let's get this cleaned up. Then we'll get the battery in, and then we'll clean the pins. No point in doing all this work if we have a dirty game. I also will trim the excess off of this connector right there. Now to clean the pins, I'm going to be using some deoxit, and then I'm going to use a magic eraser. And I am fully aware that the magic eraser is abrasive, and some people are going to be upset that I'm using it for this. But honestly, I've used it on a lot of games, and it works really, really good. Okay, so now that that's done, I'll come through, clean off the excess deoxit and any gunk that it removed. Just like that. And then I just put a very light coating of deoxit on these pins. Just like that. Okay, now the top side. And we're going to do the same thing. Deoxit, magic eraser, okay. Clean the pins. Dry the pins. And then deoxit. Just a little bit. Very light coating. Don't want it to get all over everything, just enough to kind of preserve the pins. Keep them in good shape. All right, there we go. Now we can get this installed into the cartridge. That's sure a nice looking cartridge now. There we go. Now we just got to put the screws in, then we can test it out and see if all that work was worth it. Before we test it, I do want to mention that if you want a few more details on how to clean multiple different types of game cartridges, we actually have a blog post right on our website that goes into a little more detail than I do here in the video. You can find that right on our website, and I'll put a link in the description that'll take you right to the post. Now, let's get this plugged in to our Super Nintendo Entertainment System and see if it's gonna work. All right, and power on. Okay, black screen, Nintendo logo, that's good. Good. And that is pretty scrambled. Wait, that's just part of the game. I'm not gonna lie, I've never played this game before, I've never even seen it. So that's just part of the startup screen. And here we go. So the game is fully working. So that was quite a bit of work, but I love to see this Earthbound game working again, and I'll be able to make some good money off of it. Thanks so much for watching today, and I hope you have a good one.